cats, it's Ed the Eagle Bud here, today with a 100-mile insight into the quite wonderful ASICS METASPEED SKY. Welcome to the show, tea in one hand, biscuit in the other. Ed Bud here, your favourite shoes savant. Hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, and why don't you give us a super thanks, it really does help to support the channel. Remember, Tesco told you a while back, every little helps. I've reached 100 miles or 160 kilometres on what many runners say is possibly the biggest competition to Nike's Vaporfly Next Percent shoe. Certainly performance-wise I think they're close, but this is very much its own beast. 221 grams or 8.1 ounces in my UK size 10.5. These were originally sent over to me by ASICS for review, but they're not paying me to make this video and they're not vetting my views before my valued viewers. We'll kick it off as usual with the upper first. How's this one holding up over 100 miles? Well, you'd never really know that it's done 100 miles. It looks great. I've not washed it or cleaned it or anything. It just stands out like this. The Danger Red really works. I don't think it is actually Danger Red. I've just made that up, but that's what it looks like to me. Always looks really bright, this shoe. I have to say this shoe has been one of the most consistent in terms of fit. Straight out of the box, it hasn't changed whatsoever over 100 miles. No flexing or give, it's just stayed pretty much consistent, exactly how it was when I first put it on. Now, sizing is interesting in this shoe. I do read that some people have had to go a half size up, maybe even a full size up. I gotta be honest, I find it pretty much spot on for my standard ASICS size, which is a 10.5 UK. Yes, the shoe is quite snug, but it's a race shoe. I wouldn't ever want to wear this with a really thick sock. It's just not that type of shoe. A thin sock, cinch the laces, and you're good to go. So perhaps dabble a little bit in sizing. If you want a little bit extra, maybe go a half size up. I don't think you're going to want to use this shoe to do easy miles or anything, so it's a race shoe at the end of the day. A tighter, more restrictive fit, perhaps a little bit like something Justin Hawkins might wear on stage. I think the sizing issue here is more down to the very rigid and quite prominent curve at the front of the shoe. I think you probably got about the same length there, but I think people are feeling that it's a little more snug because of that curved fit. It's certainly one of those shoes that does really point in towards the toe box. It doesn't have a huge amount of room there for toe splay, so if that's something you need, you're probably going to have to go elsewhere. I rarely get blisters or rubbing from any running shoes really. I think I can probably count them on one hand over the course of the last 3 that have caused any of those types of issues, and this shoe is no exception. It's just been a beauty on foot every time. Very soft around the heel collar here, very forgiving. It feels perhaps like there's a small mole or something that's just caressing the back of your foot. Barely noticeable really in the rest of the upper around the foot. It's just like it's not there. A bit like a spectre. And those waxy laces, oh boy, they really do work a treat. They never come untied. I've never had an issue with them. I haven't experienced any real major lace pressure here on top of the foot either in the METASPEED SKY, and that has been a problem with some shoes that have a similar construction. In wet weather, I've noticed that the upper dries very quickly. It doesn't sort of hold on to any moisture. There's just no signs of wear whatsoever here in the METASPEED SKY after 160 kilometers. A fantastic upper for me from anything between 5k to the half marathon. I'm going to stick with my original initial review score for the upper of 2.9 out of 3, only lowered by the slightly odd sizing, which could cause a few people some problems if they try and get hold of the shoe. Midsole now. Midsole wise, I've raced in this shoe between 5k up to the half marathon and I've had no major issues. ASICS certainly have a winner here with this design. There's something about the profile of the shoe that just really works. I'd say that there's not a lot in it between this and the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. It's just as capable as that or the Adios Pro 2 also. I think I find Flight Foam Turbo up to this point with my experiences in the shoe to be comparable perhaps to Zoom X. Similar sort of energy return there. It's a little bit different in feel to Lightstrike Pro. I think it's a bit more rebound here, less squash and compression from Flight Foam Turbo. It's got a very similar texture, I suppose, to Zoom X, or perhaps at least the Zoom X that we saw in the Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. It's a bit more sort of like a brittle feel. Can you hear it? Can you? I found these fantastic recently doing some 400-meter repeats at my 5k pace, and then today at my half marathon pace. Just felt easy almost. Shouldn't say things like that, but I think it did feel easy almost in this shoe at half marathon target pace. It certainly pushes you to increase your cadence, facilitates a sort of faster, more engaging feel. But I did find with the METASPEED Sky that if I focused on form with a midfoot landing, that's where I got the best out of the shoe. It flings you forward, and I'm finding that even at 100 miles, there's no change in the rigidity here in the midsole. It's just still exactly as it was when I first ran in it out the box. There's not many super shoes that you can say that about. Some of them lose their pop over time. They don't feel quite the same, where this one feels just as good as it always did. I think this is one super shoe that you could utilize in a race, perhaps without any braking. The midsole I found a little bit more stable than the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. Certainly isn't going to be as weird in the arch area as something like the Alphafly. I think perhaps because the foam's more consistent across the whole of the foot, hasn't got any cutaways like the Adios Pro 2. It's just a really simple shoe, and I think you really benefit from that. ASICS have looked at what makes a good shoe, and you've got a lot of surface area there. Just benefits the runner. This is a shoe that's undoubtedly helped me perform at my best. I'm going to give this midsole a 3 out of 3 after 100 miles. Outsole now. I think the rubber here in the METASPEED Sky's held up really well so far. There's no sign of wear whatsoever here from the mid to the forefoot. Sadly, the holes here do hoover up debris. They particularly like crushed, wet catkins. So do your risk assessment and avoid those, you'll be absolutely fine. Grip I have found to be great in both dry and wet conditions, and it's a total terror when you take it on the road, but in a good way. Do avoid light gravel though. I think that will mash up the exposed midsole a little prematurely. The rubber here is certainly more hardy than featured in Nike's Vaporfly Next Percent shoe. Just seems impervious to my punishment so far. There's a couple of viewers pointed out it's quite a bit of wear here in the rear of the shoe, but it's kind of aesthetic really. It's not really causing any problems. It hasn't affected the actual use of the shoe, and I just not really too fussed about it. I think if you're judging the shoe by how worn it is at this point, well, it hasn't affected the actual use of it. Whereas other shoes I've seen wear down and pieces have fallen off. There's none of that here. You can't get away from the fact though the exposed midsole foam does not like abrasion. I think they're just a little bit of rubber short of a perfect outsole here. If it just extended back a tiny bit further, it would take away from that problem. Just an extra centimetre here or there, I think they'd have the perfect outsole. Certainly we know ASICS rubber lasts for ages, so if they just extend it back, go on. You know, it makes sense. I'll give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the outsole after 100 miles. I haven't got any problems there with the wear. It just feels great. I'll carry on using it. Value now. Value wise, I've got to say I'm really surprised how well these are holding up at this point. Across the pace range, they feel very reasonable recovery speed and dynamite at race pace for me at least. Shoes looking good upper wise, there's no damage or wear anywhere at all, and there's no change to the midsole performance in my experience. Yes, it's a pricey shoe at 225 Earth credits here in the UK. Yeah, it's a clear 45 extra than the Adios Pro 2, and round about the same as the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. Could it be that they'll drop the price of this model when the new METASPEED Sky Plus releases? I don't know. At pace I find you can lock into a groove and it just becomes almost rhythmic, and it's a very forgiving shoe underfoot. After a recent half marathon, the legs felt fantastic the days after. I think if you can turn a blind eye to the aesthetic wear that you probably will get on the exposed midsole, I think the shoe certainly lives up to the hype. I'm going to give it a 2.7 out of 3 for value after 100 miles. The top race shoe if you want a nice, stable and consistent ride. If I've totaled all of the categories up correctly, that gives us a slightly higher score than my initial one, an 11.4 out of 12 for the METASPEED Sky after 100 miles. I'd say this is still a race pick at 100 miles or 160 kilometers, and there's not many super shoes that I still think have those properties at that point. What do you make of this one, guys? Did you pick it up? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know down in the comments. a musical interlude for you. Today it's Hey DJ from the world's famous Supreme team. This is one of those hip-hop tracks that really takes you back to where it kind of began. More of a break-in style, I suppose. Really nice drum machine sounds. The snare drum is huge. It seems to tail off for ages. There's a really lively, quite trebly bass sound here, really nice and groovy. Just really simple electric organ accompanies the bass and the beats, and some really laid back lyrics over the top. Really is like a summer type tune. You can imagine somebody with a large ghetto blaster on their shoulder wandering around listening to Hey DJ. You've even got some electric guitar stabs later on with a little bit of delay, just a little bit of ear candy to spice things up. Go and check this one out, guys. Hey DJ by the world's famous Supreme team. Hope you've enjoyed today's video and thanks for dropping by. Hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications. Give this video a thumbs up, like, and also share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you